Hello, JJ Meets World listeners. We're going to talk New Year's resolutions in our opening today, and then our guest, Mazz, the Mazz. If you don't know who he is, boy, oh boy, are you in for a real treat on this one. And he's got the best accent you've ever heard in your entire life. So listen hard to this episode. And if you need subtitles, we don't do that yet. We're working on it. At one point, we'll get it. Just buckle down and get through this episode. You're going to love it. Also, go to patreon.com and support this podcast. There's a lot of people asking for your support on Patreon, but we really are asking you for it. Literally, Ted and Michael, Sarah, Gene, Ralphio.
1, 2, 3, 4. JJ Gordon, sort of like that Indiana Jones, in that he's always sniffing out his next adventure. Yes, he is. He's always interviewing guests so he can have them on his show and they can talk about pop culture, arts, and leisure. JJ has his flag unfurled and he likes his french fries curled, and he's fun and then he twirled as he goes to meet the world. He will march into the rain even if his ankle sprained. Take a peek inside his brain. This podcast is called JJ Meets World.
Hey there, podcast listeners. You're listening to JJ Meets World, obviously, because you chose to download it or stream it on whatever device you're using. Just curious, are you streaming us on an iPhone or a Samsung, or maybe you have one of those awesome Pixel 3s? The camera on that Pixel 3 is amazing. Previous guest Britta Nelson got one, and it does this portrait mode where it blurs everything behind you but keeps you in focus, and it's super sharp. I'm kind of jealous, and I don't often get technology jealous of other people, but that's definitely a thing where you covet thy neighbor in some way, shape, or form. And now I think it's going to be when it comes down to technology. That being said, 2019, and this is a bold statement, I think is going to be the year where I get rid of my smartphone.
Whoa!
Yeah.
That is a bold statement.
Do
you have to get rid of it? No, okay. Let's define what getting rid of it means. It doesn't mean upgrading to a new one.
Correct.
It doesn't mean having it until December 30th and then getting rid of it for a day. So you do it in 2019. You're actually saying that you plan on living the majority of 2019 without a smartphone.
Correct. This is what I would like to do. So I've got a timer on here that tells me how much time I have had where the phone's actively been open. And I started adding up the hours from just the very first week of the year. And it's too much. It's too much. And I'm not smarter for it. I didn't have meaningful connections with other people. There was no emergency that needed my attention. So what I'd like to do is this. At work, when I'm at the radio station, I sit in front of a computer most of the day anyway. So I'm connected in some way, shape, or form. So if someone needs to get a hold of me via Facebook, that's a conduit right there. I usually do a little bit of work every night, so I'll have another connection on my computer at night. But I'm thinking about going to a flip phone.
Okay.
I'm like a little simple flip phone. But I would like to have a QWERTY keyboard with it because I'd like to text as part of it as well.
Right.
And what I think I am asking for from phone companies is to make a simple, I don't want to call it a dumb phone because it's not dumb, but a phone that concentrates on organizing your contacts. It focuses on texting and then has a camera that keeps you up to date, because I will never buy another digital camera. So right. I like the aspect of having it. Those are the three main things I use my phone for that I feel are necessities.
So like a phone that doesn't require a data plan with it.
Correct. And I think I would like that. I think I would like that a lot.
So that's your resolution for 2019?
That's what I'm hoping for.
That's a good one.
It's a big thing to bite off. That's a lot.
And I mean, at the very least, you can start down the path without switching the phone by changing your habits.
Correct. So that's even another thing where that was suggested to me right off the bat is, why don't you just stop using your phone so much?
Right.
But it's like telling an addict to, like, don't worry, listen, I know there's a bunch of cocaine on the table.
Not as simple as that.
Just don't use any of the cocaine. It's truly not that simple.
So I've made a New Year's resolution as well. However, I'm not going to tell you what it is. I have not told anyone what it is. Only I know. Not a single person on this planet knows what it is. And I'm not going to talk about it until the end of the year if I achieve it.
Oh,
so
what if I guessed it?
You can try. I bet you won't. And I just will not. I will
not
neither confirm nor deny.
Okay.
But basically, I've got a New Year's resolution, and I will tell people about it if I achieve it by the end of the year. But
Does it has to do with
it's going to take the whole year.
cheese.
I cannot confirm nor deny.
Okay.
It,
I like that.
It will take me the whole year, for sure.
Oh, interesting. I like that.
So you'll
It's
all find
good.
out
Grizzly
about it.
Adams beard. Grizzly Adams beard.
I don't need a year for that.
One of the things we did on our social media on our JJ Meets World page is we asked people what their New Year's resolutions were, and I think it'd be good for us to go through some of these. Miranda Madsen said, "I resolved to support more local stuffs, artists, performers, businesses, etc. I'd also like to hear some mystery guest podcasts. Tucker should arrange some guests and augment their voice on the mic. I think it would lead to some hilarious shenanigans for JJ."
That is an interesting concept, and I wonder then too. I think that what that also means, if I'm reading into what Miranda's saying correctly, is that the guest would actually be a mystery to you as well, so you wouldn't know who you're talking to. I think that's kind of cool.
Set it up kind of like a mystery date type thing.
Maybe like once every couple months we do a mystery where we see how long it takes JJ to guess who he's talking to, and then the mask is lifted or whatever. That's kind of a cool idea. I'll take the next one. Oh, and Miranda has been on the show before. I'm forgetting the episode number and the title.
But it's when Tequila Mockingbird
Tequila
was on.
Mockingbird was the other guest on that one. Something about muffin. Muffin is in the title.
Yeah.
The word muffin is in the title. Next one is Monica Brown-Ecker, our good buddy, who was the assistant director for Santaland. She's been on the show twice. And Monica says, "I resolved to have more confidence in what I know and to kick the imposter syndrome to the goddamn curb," which is awesome. Like, she should do that because Monica is hilarious. A incredibly funny person and really talented, and she needs to stop letting the imposter syndrome kick in.
Remind me, I need to talk to you about something off mic about Monica that I noticed that I just want to leave the mystery there. Noel Scotch Anderson said, "Enjoyed listening to the year-end wrap-up. Now have me back on, you bastards." So I guess his resolution is to find a way to get on the show again.
Yeah, it really, his resolution is something that we have to do.
He also, before I even asked, volunteered to be the live house band for our live episode, which is coming up sometime in 2019.
Right.
So I like that he's very excited about this.
And then last, from the Hawley, Minnesota 1980s Vintage Toy Museum, this jokester wrote, "I resolved to finally buckle down and buy more toys."
But I think he's serious about it.
Right, but he's making a sarcastic joke about, "Oh, I really gotta buy more toys and buckle down to do it." I think this guy buys a large amount of toys.
But maybe he really does need to
That'd be
push
like you
himself
saying,
to buy
like,
more.
You know, I really gotta drink a lot more Diet Coke this year.
Oh, wouldn't that be great? I was at Costco yesterday, and I ran into someone who was a friend of ours, Maggie, who was just buying Diet Coke. And I said, "Oh, just a cart full of Diet Coke, huh?" And she had some explanation of she forgot to buy it the last time she was here. And I thought to myself, I was like, well, I bring a list to the store now because I've hit that age where I don't want to go to the store more than once if I don't have to.
Right.
You know, when in settlers' times, when you went to the fort to their general store, you didn't say like, "Oh, shite, I forgot the nails,
You were
the penny nails."
Mostly just buying blocks of salt, probably.
Probably. Speaking of blocks of salt, our guest today loves salted meats. He, in fact, tells us...
Good dismount.
Do you like that?
Good stick in the dismount there,
He
JJ.
talks about fried Spam later on in the episode, and I think you guys are going to enjoy it. This is one of my all-time favorite episodes. They're all kind of like my babies, but this one's really special. This one also has some international flavor. Andrew, Mazz, Mary. Is it Mary?
That's what he said.
Mari? Mary? Mary,
He
right?
pronounced it Mary.
Mary. I'm trying to get his pronunciation. Boy, oh boy, do not let your your ladies listen to this podcast because they're gonna swoon.
Right.
They're gonna swoon, and then when they see the picture of the man behind the accent, oh boy.
He's like a Bono that you're not annoyed with.
Yeah. Exactly.
I've known Mazz for a while. He's married to Dayna Del Val, who we've had on the show before, and Dayna has always given me crap about my Mazz crush, which is my man crush on Mazz. Mazz is just a cool guy.
Yeah.
And he's someone who you want to have a beer with him and talk about science. You really, really do.
He's a scientist. He's also we have a great conversation about education in this. This is one of our longer episodes,
Yeah.
so I think whether you listen to it in one chunk or you block it up a little bit, you guys are really going to enjoy this episode.
And his specialty is in plant biology or
Which is-
chemistry. Both. We're just
Yeah.
going to say plants.
Well, he makes a distinct saying like chemistry and biology go hand in hand,
Right.
and they're very
He's
similar.
a plant guy.
And he also gives a great pitch for having Dayna back on as a guest too. So he does a lot of really great stuff in this, and you might find out that he and Dayna have an inkling for a certain actor across the pond who makes just the worst, best movies ever. So sit back, strap in. This episode of JJ Meets World, I think you're going to love it. And by the way, you can always head over to patreon.com and support this podcast by donating just a little bit. It doesn't have to be a lot. You can give us $1 a month, or you can give us $20 a month, whatever it happens to be. In fact, if every guest who's been on this show gave us $1 a month, we'd be able to continue doing this. So I'm going to put the weight on the guests' shoulders now. So you want to be on this podcast? Donate to our Patreon. That's the surest sign that you're going to get on here.
You want to come stay at my house? You better buy me some groceries.
Yeah, people do that. All right. I'm running a hotel here. Okay. All right, let's go.
JJ Meets World.
Mazz, welcome to JJ Meets World.
Thank you.
And if someone pushed me and said, well, what's Mazz's first name? I don't know if I know that. I think I only know you by Mazz.
Yeah, well, my first name's actually, my name's Andrew. Actually, it's actually Andrew John. It's hyphenated.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't even know that. I'm a huge Mazz fan.
Where does the name Mazz come from?
My last name's Mary. And I think a guy I still know as a friend, when we were about 5, just called me Mazz out of the blue one day. So for the last 43 years, I've been called Mazz by almost everyone except my mother.
Oh, does she still call you Andrew
Yeah.
John?
Sometimes she calls me Andrew John Michael Patrick, just to really get my attention.
And obviously, you're not from the United States originally.
No, both my parents were Irish. I was born and grew up in Windsor.
Like the castle?
Yes.
Or the whiskey?
No, the castle.
Okay.
Unfortunately, the castle. So you can see it from my sister's backyard. So I grew up with Liz, as we like to call her. And I'd actually forgotten how quaint Windsor was until I met Dayna, my wife, and when we first went to England together back in 2003. She just told me, she goes, "Well, you grew up in a Dickens novel."
And does it feel like
does,
that now?
You know, it wasn't Bleak House, but it was definitely a Dickens village kind of, cobbled streets.
Old men constantly learning the error of their ways.
Yeah, something like that.
A lot of gruel.
Yeah.
Did you have a friend named Pip?
No, I did not, actually. A lot of us are nicknames up. You know, I never went to Stanford or anything like that, so we didn't have the weird nicknames like that, just me.
One thing that I've always noted is people in England love to talk about where they went to college.
Yes.
Like that it's like they introduce themselves and then they also mention where they went to school. And to me, that's such an interesting way to identify yourself. It's almost like saying, like, "Oh, I'm also a Manchester United fan." And are you just feeling out like the group there? But do they do that in Ireland at all? Like, is that part of the?
No, they don't. I've never. I noticed that in England, everyone likes to try and tell you they have an education, which I think it seems odd.
Right.
Because clearly, to me that says. Hello, my name's so-and-so, I'm not stupid.
I I should start more conversations that way.
But you're thinking, like, if you start talking to someone for a few minutes and you realize, all right, you can string a sentence together. Let's have a conversation, buy you a coffee. Maybe you can tell me a bit of your life story. Like, did you go to college? Yes. Okay, where'd you go to college?
There you go. And then fill in the gaps.
Because and I think in England, because not very few people actually go to college, because they only take every year they take about 10 to 15% of school leavers.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
and if
man.
you don't pass your first year exams, you're out.
Like permanently, or
Yeah.
can you go back?
You
And...
can't really go back because you'll have to wait a year and reapply, and then it's hard to find because the first round through it's almost free, and then when you try it again, you have to start paying for it. So less people do that.
What brought you to the United States?
Oh my God, this should be just such a simple, easy story. It isn't, unfortunately.
A plane or a boat? That's what I'm looking for
That's
here.
what it was. Yeah, I got on a plane. That would be easy. Now, so I was doing my PhD in Norwich at a place called the John Innes Centre, which, unless you're a plant biologist, no one's heard of. But everyone who is a plant biologist thinks, really? You went there? Ooh. Now I really do sound
that's a
European.
big deal.
Yes.
That's a big deal. Then,
Yes, I went to the John Innes, which some people confuse with John Inman, who was in Are You Being Served? Different person. I'm glad one of the two people in here with me got that.
Oh yeah. In fact, I just watched the secondary series they had where they get the money and then they buy the little bed and breakfast together, and I was like, ooh, you needn't have bothered.
Yeah, it didn't last long. Anyway, so I was in Norwich doing my PhD, and a guy who doesn't work here anymore, called Alan White, and his family turned up for a sabbatical from NDSU. So I got to know him, and we became friends, and so we stayed in touch. So in 2000, I met him in a conference in New Hampshire, and I was working in Glasgow at the time, and he said to me, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, my job in Glasgow's finishing up. I got a job lined up in Christchurch, New Zealand." And he said, "No, I want you to come to work with me in North Dakota." And I thought about it, and then I said to him again, because I really like the guy. I still do. We try and... I haven't seen him for a couple of years, but he lives in South Carolina now. I said, all right, NDSU. All right, North Dakota. I remember that. So where exactly is it? And he said, it's in Fargo. So, to make this story even longer... and he's actually a very good plant biochemist, which is what I ended up doing. So I actually thought, well, work with Alan, it's a good stepping stone. So a couple of years before that meeting, my dad had just died, and when I was growing up with him, we used to watch all these movies like westerns and old war films, and John Wayne was a big favorite. So one of our favorite films was She Wore a Yellow Ribbon, where there's a scene in it where he says to Joanne Drew, never apologize to a man, it's a sign of weakness. In the film, he says that behind a placard, in front of a placard that says, "Welcome to Fargo, Dakota territory." And the film was filmed in South Dakota. So when I put all that together, I thought, I'll have to come to Fargo as an homage to my dad. That is how I ended up.
Wow.
On January the 9th, 2001, when I landed in Fargo to be picked up by the airport. So
You're looking...
Yeah. So for 4.5 years, I was a postdoc research fellow at NDSU. And then in 2005, I applied for a 1-year job at MSUM teaching as a sabbatical replacement. And I did something because they kept me, gave me a tenure track job and tenured me. And I'm about to start my 15th year at MSUM.
Wow.
I'm halfway through my 15th year, actually.
Wow.
So you were there for the big name change
I was.
as well?
Because Dayna went there. I ended up teaching a class that she went to.
Is that how you met?
No.
I was going to say naughty,
isn't
naughty.
Dayna and I are only 2 years apart, so it would have been weird if I ended up teaching a class that she was in.
Well, people go back to school and stuff. But.
Yeah, when I first started teaching her, I met all of Dana's old friends, and they said, "Oh, what are you teaching?" I said, "Well, I'm teaching a class called Matter and Life." And I took that. Yeah, took the exams, didn't go to class, got a C. That's all they always said.
Took the exams, never went to class, got a C.
Yeah.
So what does that say about a class where you could never go to it but still manage a passing grade?
Oh, I don't know what it says about me, because people that try and pull that off of me don't actually pass the class.
It's like JJ going, Like, what do you do for a living? Oh, I work in radio. Pff, oh, radio is just garbage.
Yeah.
I never listen to it.
Oh,
Yeah.
It's like sort of the same thing.
have a great day then. I hope you don't get a ratings diary. What I don't understand about the college experience is it costs money, and then people choose to do things like sleep or play video games instead of going and absorbing this knowledge that they're paying for. It's like people who go to movie theaters and are checking Facebook during the movie, and I was like, that seat is $16.
Yeah.
Why not just stay home or sit in the parking lot? You can have a much easier experience for less money. But then on the flip side, there are those people who are built for education and just love to absorb every piece of it and are never stop learning.
Yeah, I mean, you see them both, definitely. And I teach a couple of non-majors classes, and I really love teaching those classes because you get to see like 120 to 200 students at a time, and they're doing every major you can think of. And 80% of them really want to learn something. So you actually stick with that 80% and you help them out. They come see you in your office. They talk to you after class. You know, sometimes they email you for just a quick clarification. And they're the ones that you pay attention to, and they're the ones that you can see succeeding. And, you know, they're the ones that, some of them, they're the names you remember.
That's good. That's important, right?
And they love it when you remember the name. It's hard when you've got 200 kids. You kind of remember, you remember the faces of the first 5 rows. But if you can actually, when they come see you in office hours, because that's what they're there for, you actually remember their name, and they like the fact that you know who they are.
And what do you go by?
Oh, like I say you can call me Mazz or Dr. Mazz or Dr. Mary. A lot of them like to call me Dr. Mazz.
Oh,
Which
Dr.
is
Mazz. I've never even thought of that, and I love that so much.
because it does make me sound like a pediatrician. But
I was going to say, it makes you sound like a Bond villain.
it does.
Yes, it does.
Dr.
It does.
Mazz.
I should just start doing this, putting my little finger in my mouth.
So is most of your job, I mean, is it a lot of lecturing? I mean, is there other stuff that you're doing? Like actually running people through experimentation and stuff like that?
Yeah,
or?
So with the different levels of classes, some the labs are a different experience, but also the major students do independent research. So I have this fantastic student in a minute called Isaac, who's he does literally work independently because he's got this very specific project, and he looks to me for he comes up with an idea, and I think that's great, and we can make that work here. But he likes to do things on his own because he works 40 hours a week too. So he kind of comes to work, on a Sunday night when I'm being very quiet, letting Dayna watch Paul Dark.
Right, got it.
And not making too much noise.
I'm interested in this concept. Is they say like a smile is the same in every language, right? So what about science? So you've had the experience of working in a scientific field in other countries, several countries. Is science a universal language, so to speak, or are there things that in the United States that we take for a scientific fact that maybe in Ireland they'd be like, no, not yet?
No, science in itself and the root of science, it is actually universal language. Thankfully, the international language for science is English, or I'd be in trouble. Because they're a little more relaxed in Europe. You can actually tell someone if they're bad at something, because I actually do thank my French teacher. It was back in 1982. She said to me, don't do French and don't do music. She was my music teacher. So I plateaued out on the recorder. I said, why can't I do French? She goes, you are really bad at it. And you really are really bad at music. So I am musically talentless. I can't speak French. But she said, we've set it up. You're supposed to do a language in school, but you're good at everything else. So you're going to do an extra geography class. So I took extra economic geography, which is something that the troublemakers usually took. It was one of the most interesting classes I ever took. There was a point to it. It wasn't like learning boundaries and where a country is on a map. It's how countries work. We talked about gross domestic products and what the difference between that and then gross net domestic product is, and what the biggest import of a country was and the export of a country. And I still remember it. It was actually really interesting.
And why some countries became superpowers because of a particular mineral that they just happened to have.
But it was
a
a class they put together for people who didn't want to be in school. And I just thought it was really interesting.
Right.
So I think maybe that's how you're teaching on majors class. You've got to make it as interesting as possible.
Do you ever tell people they're just bad at it?
No, I don't, because if they come for help, I do. I hear, I won't name any names, but I've heard some people say, a student will go to a professor and say, I'm worried about my grade, and I can hear from the office down the corridor, yes, so am I, or yes, you should be. I don't do that. I back here, part of my head is going, just say something. No, come on, let's work it out. But if they're there to help, I help them.
And there's a big difference between someone who's seeking out help to get better versus someone who's just accepting, like, well, I'm not getting it, and there's just no point in me working harder on it because I just don't get it.
Yeah. Dr. Mazz, what can we do about the C-? What can we do about it?
Well, do a bit of work. Because it's. I never saw a Scantron until I started working here. I never took a multiple choice test in my life. So I even my big non-majors classes, I try and have a certain percentage of the final grade to be stuff that you do that isn't a Scantron test, and you have 2 weeks to do it.
I like that. You want to know the problem with the Scantron test is there is no place in the real world, quote unquote, that uses a system like that. So why should I get good at being tested in that fashion when I'm never going to use it again? Not even at the DMV.
No, you're absolutely right, and that is something to consider. But if you've got a couple of hundred students in a class, you can't really do a lot else, because you can't. I mean, I know English professors read a lot of papers, and if you're teaching a writing intensive class, you have a lot of work to do, or if you're reading lab reports, but you can't keep up that vigor for 4 classes a semester and service a load of students.
Have you ever had a big stack of Scantron tests that you need to run through the machine, and you get there and there's a line for the machine?
Oh, well, thankfully we just
you just write a letter on it.
No,
and
they
don't
get
care what
sent
the
over to the
results
library, and the library deals with that, and you just wait a couple of days, and you do get them back. So they're very good at doing that.
I think that we're probably a breath away from students taking their tests all on iPads or all internet based that'll instantly tell them what their grade is. I feel like that's like, I look at high school in Fargo, and every high schooler is given a small laptop to work with. And I think of like, when Tucker and I were in high school, you had to go to a computer lab that was either locked or unlocked, depending on whether or not a teacher was present to be in there. And the most you could do was open Netscape Navigator and go to encyclopediabritannica.com.
If you wanted to play a game in class, you had to program Tetris into your T1 whatever calculator, Texas Instrument calculator you had, or you just would write boobs on it and look at that and laugh at that.
I suppose the amount of time that took, you could have actually learned something for the test.
Well, yeah, I could have.
At the same time though, and we talked about this on the show before. Certainly, in public school in the U.S., I think the biggest thing that they fail at is that they, and I'm sure private school does this too, is they fail to teach how learning can actually be pleasurable and like a love for learning. Oftentimes, like when I went to high school, it was a lot of boundaries and dates and remember this, remember that, and then we're going to see if you recall that when we do the test. There are subjects in high school that I just cratered at because I had no interest in them. And now I actually have a love for learning about them. So like chemistry and physics and classes that I did poorly in. And because it was all just, there's 100 of you. We got to get through you as quickly as possible. And then we're going to assess how much of this you retained. But we have no way of really knowing if you learned it, quote unquote. And we're not turning you into someone who pursues learning as just a benefit to your life.
there is that problem, and there are there are teachers that are crying inside because they want to teach. They probably don't have the opportunity or the means, and I hear a lot of people just blaming the teacher. And maybe there are teachers that have just kind of got to the point where they just want to teach what they have to teach, and they are few and far between. I would personally say, having taught people who are also going to get a biology degree with an education emphasis, they do great work. And a high school teacher's job, I think, is probably a lot harder than a university professor's job.
It's definitely the system itself. It's not the teachers, because I've had some amazing teachers in the public school system. And yeah, you're right. I mean, those are the teachers that did everything they could to essentially buck the system because they wanted to teach you the way you learned.
And a high school teacher is dealing with a problem, and it's a big problem. They're dealing with people that have to be in high school. I get people with conflicting ability, but they're in college because they've decided to go to college. And that there is a world of difference between those two things right there.
So exactly what is it that you do? Some plant science is what I'm taking. Like, all I remember from what was the class that we had to take in high school with the last, like, not biology, but like there was like a plant sciences course.
I didn't have to take that.
Where you looked at a cell under a microscope.
That was in biology.
I didn't take biology, so I know for sure it wasn't
any
then.
Plant stuff I had to learn was in biology.
That was a class that we had, Earth Science.
That was in middle school.
Yep. So that's my knowledge begins and ends with a middle school education, Earth Science. There's plates and a crust to the Earth, and plants have cells. That's about all I remember. Oh, and water will always take the easiest path.
That's physics.
No, is it?
No, well, physics, math, biology, chemistry.
That's true.
They all kind of
They
intertwine.
feed into each other.
You have to learn physics to understand biology, and chemistry is the root of most things.
Is it really? Oh boy, I'm so far behind.
See, that was it. Like, my chemistry teacher, I could give a crap about chemistry when I was taking his class. Now that I'm reading about outer space and all of the planetary science we're getting, and just and also the understanding as we get deeper down into like the quantum realm and stuff, all these bits, it is endlessly fascinating.
It's also chemistry.
Endlessly fascinating.
You got a probe out there looking for organic material, which is a chemical analysis of something.
And we're like, within the next couple of weeks, we'll be getting a deeper chemical analysis of Ultima Thule, which is that Kuiper Belt object that we just photographed. And it's
the snowman planet, right?
Yeah, and it's like the most distant object we have ever even seen up close. And it was one that essentially they believe is relatively untouched since the formation of the solar system. And so that they'll be able to infer or discern or just straight up prove facts about the early solar system, possibly from studying this thing. I mean, that to me is mind-blowing, and nothing when I went through public school was able to instill that sense of awe in me. And I feel like had they been able to do that through whatever means, I might have gotten a better grade in that class because I would have applied myself. Otherwise, I just felt like I was memorizing a periodic table that I didn't see how it could affect my life.
Because you don't understand the connections, and that's the trouble. If you just learn chemistry or biology, you might get bored. A lot of people love chemistry who found biology boring, and vice versa, but they are actually connected. Until you actually learn the connection, you're never going to fully understand how knowing both will help understand it. And of course, physics and math does come into that as well. Dayna even talks about a great conversation we had with a member of the MSUM physics department when she first met him, a guy called Steve Lindas, who explained to Dayna how much physics she actually knows by virtue of the fact she used to build sets and take them down after a theater production when she was at MSUM, and she was just enthralled by his conversation with us. Probably the most interested she's ever been in physics.
And I think it's just it's finding that
Love Dayna.
It's
Shout out
finding
to
that
Dayna.
connection, right? That thing that connects you to something that you didn't think
Yeah.
you were ever going to be connected to.
And it's hard to do that in high school because you'd said this is what you got to teach them, this is what you got to teach them, and it's harder to get into that conversation any further without going down a sort of like political pathway that you don't want to go down. But just saying maybe at some point there should be a Secretary of Education who is or has been a teacher.
Oh, isn't that a novel idea?
Yeah.
Just saying, out of the blue.
Right.
They're
Right.
doing a very unique thing in a more rural school system in North Dakota, northern Cass, where they're getting rid of grade levels. So if you are 14 but you're really excelling in math, they'll let you take what would be considered a senior level math class. And so you're not going to be with your peers of, in a year or two, but you're going to be with other people who are at the same level of learning that you are. And because you're in that high level math, maybe doesn't mean that you're in a higher level science. So you might be with some, like a 12-year-old who's really excelling in science. But the idea is that you kind of end up being grouped with people who are at the same level of passion or interest in that particular subject. And that, to me, blows my mind. I think what a great idea, because that way, if someone is interested in something, you can let them excel in it. I tell a lot of high school kids, when you go to college, if you decide to go to college, do yourself a favor and make a plan in the first year or two to take a course that's outside of your major, that's something that you're just interested in, and see if that changes the way that you approach learning. Because I think so many people go to college and they go, oh, I got to get rid of all my generals right away. I got to take all of my generals right away. Well, have some fun with that learning process as well. A previous guest on the podcast, Britta Nelson, talked about how she took the history of rock and roll at NDSU, and that she loves music, and that became the thing that ignited her excitement for learning. And she goes, oh, all of a sudden I was learning about something I was interested in.
Yeah, you've covered a lot of very interesting points. Quinn had a great high school opportunity because they streamed the math classes. So by the time he was in his last year at Fargo South, through Clara Barton and Hawthorne, the school system.
This is Mazz and Dana's son we're talking about.
Yeah. He took Calculus 2 at MSUM in his last year of high school, and Calculus 3. I mean, it's not called Calculus 3 at MSUM. It's called multi-vectoral analysis, and
It's called really hard math. That's what it's called.
I don't know what that means, but he took those two classes because he was going to do a math. Quinn ended up with 3 majors and a minor in physics.
Jeez.
But he just absolutely loved math. But he had the opportunity to do those classes, and he took, well, because he was in the Fargo school system, he didn't get to do it through the Moorhead school system, which links you into MSUM. But because I worked there, he could take those classes for practically nothing. But he had that opportunity. So if you're in the right school, and bless them, North Dakota and Minnesota school systems, especially in this area, do that. If you have the ability and they can get you in the right direction, then you can do a high level of math or any subject if you have a passion for it. And we have high school students at MSUM all the time. In fact, one of my research students, she's actually 16.
Really?
She goes to her name's Lauren Knoll. Lauren Knoll. She's started the 11th grade. She goes to Park Christian. We're writing a paper together on her work on aquaponics.
Wow.
With me at MSUM. So when I first met her, she was in the 7th grade. She spent 2 years working out how to use a recycled plastic bottles to make a solar still to purify water. Then she started working on my aquaponics system. She has gone to 3 state science fairs. She's won practically every award you can get as a high school student, and she's just brilliant. And she's also just down to the ground. Her parents do an absolutely fantastic job because her older brother is also completely rooted in being normal, Cameron, and he's just started. He's halfway through his freshman year on a scholarship to do engineering at NDSU. Evan, the younger one, I've only met him once, but he's probably destined to greatness as well. So,
when I was 16 years old, I still couldn't beat Donkey Kong Country on the Super Nintendo. So,
I mean, if you show an interest and your teacher has the ability to push you, they do fantastic work.
that's amazing.
But also, you need your own interest. You can force a kid to learn something, but if they're not interested, a lot of people come to me and go, I hated math. I said, did you ever go and talk to your math teacher about how much you dislike math or didn't get it? No, I just hated math. I said, can't help you. So you're going to probably, and some of these people end up blaming someone else for how they can't do math and think, wait, if you didn't find it interesting, find someone who could show you how it's interesting. You know, part of this is on you.
I also find that people give up on stuff so easily.
Yes, they do. They do. I'm going to sound old. Nowadays, they do. Yes.
Old man Mazz.
Yes. All these millennials. Oh. But it's true. No, I don't want to sound too old.
It's all right. I play cribbage twice a week, so and I'm an old man
myself. A lot of people just do give up on stuff, and they shouldn't. You know, you should just think, well, I can't do this yet.
Oh, there you go. Adding the word "yet" makes all the difference.
Or this person can't explain this to me. I'll see if I can find someone who can. That's why you have study groups. That's why you have study guides. You get someone else to explain it. Hey, I have a tutor in my non-majors class specifically, so if they don't get how I try and explain it to them, they can go and see Joanna Blum is currently one of my non-majors. She's a biology major at MSUM. She's currently one of my tutors, and she does a fantastic job of re-explaining the course material to these undergraduate students, and they can generally get it if someone else explains it to you in a completely different way.
What's it like to compose a paper? You said you're working on one now with this 16-year-old wonderkin. What's it like to compose a paper, and what's the hope for where it'll end up in the world?
What Lauren is finding out now is it's different from the paper the papers that she had to write for state science fairs or science competitions, where it's actually written in a language that someone would actually read, mainstream language. And funny, going back to talking about Charles Dickens, if you actually write a scientific journal, it is very archaic. I mean, writing up a thesis is an incredibly archaic way of writing. It's all past tense, passive. No one speaks like that anymore, and if they do, they lock you up down at Prairie St. John or something. But she's finding it hard. It's very unpersonalized, and it's a shame really that we still write science like that. In fact, Dayna's master's thesis was on rewriting the academy and how you should rewrite academic, change academic writing so it's accessible to other people.
And when you write a paper, you complete a paper. I mean, is this the kind of thing that gets submitted for peer review, or does it just go into like the school system's like library of papers?
Oh no, it has to be sent off. It gets sent to a chief editor who sends it out, and it gets sent to at least 2 editors who review it, and they say, well, this is okay, but here's what's wrong with it. Sometimes they say, well, this is great. Sometimes they just hate it, in which case you've really got to redo it. Or if they completely reject it, there's more than 2 journals for any subject, so you just try and get it published somewhere else. But it's a learning experience too. So I'm fully expecting when we finish this off, because I want Lauren to be the first author, so she's doing most of the first drafts, and then we'll change them together. I'm not 100% sure it's going to be accepted straight away. There's going to be a lot of changes to it, but that's part of the learning experience too. I remember when the first thing I got published. Hell, I definitely wasn't in high school. I was way past then. I was an undergraduate when I first got something published. But it's a lot of work.
And not giving up. And not getting that first revision.
It's basically what you should do in high school. It's a lot of work, and you shouldn't give up, though you want to. And all those films make you out to be so cool if you don't. But don't. Stay in school, kids.
Right.
Keep my job going by coming to college so I can teach you.
So what are things, obviously there's huge differences between Ireland and the United States, but what's something that you miss from Ireland from growing up there that you wish the United States would adopt a little bit more? Whether it's a food or a phrase or just, you're really crushing this mock turtleneck you're wearing right now, Mazz, maybe more of that.
Oh, that last one sounds pretty good, actually.
Yeah.
I was going to say,
I don't think I've never had a student ask me anything other than why do you always wear black, as far as my fashion sense goes.
I mean, I like in Ireland how that everything opens at like 10 a.m. and kind of closes at like 3 or 4 because people want to go like have a beer, hang out or something. Like not the antithesis of the American ideal of you should crush your life with work and fill every hour of it with work. At least that of the 10 days I spent in Ireland, that was one of the takeaways from the people that I met there. But
it is true. Some countries are more naturally laid back, and there are some countries in Ireland where they're actually. I think Portugal have tried this. I don't know if they're still doing it, but they tried in the university system to Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. all your lectures and labs and everything. And you have a 4-day weekend.
Ooh.
Really?
It worked. They did it to save money.
I know a lot of public school systems that have gotten rid of Friday school so that they can save money. And that's interesting to try and say, okay, well, we'll cram some other things in there. But at the same time, I also think if I'm going to give my day to learning, why don't I give my whole day to learning?
And thinking about what Tucker just said about, really cramming the work in. There's a lot of companies, and Quinn's going to start working for Boeing in a couple of weeks here, but his contract stipulates that he works a certain amount of hours and he gets every other Friday off.
Really?
They'll do it.
That's nice.
It's brilliant.
I mean, why not? I also think any time that a company encourages you to become a more well-rounded human being, they're going to get that back in a creative sense. Even if you're working with straight facts, even if you're a mathematician, taking that time to go out and watch the ripples in a pond while you're on vacation that spark something in your brain,
right,
is important. And I love the companies that are willing to encourage that. I worked for a place in Chicago that you would ask your boss, and they had museum passes to every museum in Chicago. And so you'd request the museum pass for this Tuesday or for the weekend, and then you could go to all of these great museums that do cost quite a bit of money if you want to become a member to everything. But, oh, man, so there was never a time when I wasn't out finding something neat or learning how a choo-choo train works.
Well, if you were to talk to a lot of high-performance athletes now, they'll tell you that it's not just the exercise you put in, but the time you allow your body to rest.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it needs to recuperate and rebuild, and at some point, you push yourself to a point where there's just diminishing results after that point, that you need the time to digest, to think about it, or to just let your body rest and recuperate. And I think, the Monday to Friday schedule that's not super conducive to that, especially because you still have regular life. You still have family obligations and everything else you have to do on the outside of that, plus any extracurricular activities like theater or sports. So the amount of time that you actually have to actually learn seems to be really compressed.
It is. We expect, and we push. I think some schools, when they want high-achieving students, they do push them to the point where they actually have never had the chance of being a teenager. and that can be a problem as well. I mean, you see a lot of people get out of what they're doing because they think, well, I spent my entire life getting to this point, and now I'm worn out. You need a balance, and it is an incredibly important thing to do. Even when I advise students, I say, well, you're in a great position because you're at a liberal arts university at MSUM. You have to do 42 credit. Part of your degree is 42 credits of liberal arts courses, which are great because when I was an undergrad, all I learned was biology and chemistry. We didn't do an art subject. We didn't do anything like that. If you wanted to learn about history, you'd go talk to a history major in the Union Bar and talk to them about what they're doing. But that would imply that as an undergraduate back then in the late 80s and early 90s, you actually knew how to have a conversation with someone other than what your major was in, which was it was a sparse skill set to have.
Well, that's interestingly enough, one of the reasons we started this podcast was to find out what are the stories of other people and share a little bit of their world with us. And we found some pretty intriguing things over the last year of doing this podcast. Right. And I think the world is getting smaller all the time with the advent of technology. And now you can watch a live video cam from any continent. In fact,
or from the space station.
But at the same time, the world is also becoming a less familiar place because people are not used to conversing face-to-face and looking someone in the eyes or being able to feel the social cues of like, oh, the conversation is done now and it's time to say goodbye. Because we're used to doing these things on our phone where you can be doing 5 other things at the same time, or you just say, I'm running out of data. Sorry. Click.
Right.
Yeah, it's absolutely, you're absolutely right. And I see it, like I said, I see it all the time. We get major students in, biology majors going off to want to go to professional schools, and then they do mock interviews with us. So even if they do this particular communication skill set in a course, they just getting them to actually talk oral communication and written communication is still needs some work.
I even listen to this podcast, and when I edit this one, I'm going to hate it too. How many times I say or like. Even just getting rid of those weird tics that we all have in our vocabulary does wonders for other people's perception of you. Which is a big part of it. Not that, and I'm not trying to go down the path of you should worry about how other people perceive you, but presenting yourself as someone who is grounded and intelligent goes a long way to opening doors for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And funny you should say this. I was just when we went back to England for Christmas, I was just walking down the street of the little village just outside Royal Windsor proper,
with quotes in the air.
Well, yes, they're just hanging out there. The village I grew up in. There were kids, old, just 18, 19. I can say they're kids now because I'm 48. They're all
old
kids.
Man Mazz.
They were speaking outside. They were outside smoking in the smoking area outside in one of the local pubs. I had no idea what they were saying. But what I didn't notice is that every other word out of their mouths was like. Dayna referred to it as the Valley School, the Valley High system, where everyone picked up globally from the media on people speaking using, well, it's like really hard, like that they can't construct a sentence anymore. And that's what we're left with, a load of people who are massively inarticulate to the point where it's almost funny.
When I interview people on the radio, it's easy to establish what their filler words are right away. And I get to interview people who know everything there is to know about their subject, but they still, for whatever reason, want to add filler words. Right there. Is one of them.
Also, ending sentences can be tough.
Yes.
I'll say stuff like that, things like that, just ending non-committal generic phrases because I didn't find a way to end the sentence properly.
And why are we pushing for generality with so many aspects of our conversation? So things. Oh, yeah, I got some things to do today. I've got stuff.
But at least you're
like-
not finishing your sentence with your intonation suggesting it's a question.
Oh, yes. Am I?
Dana pointed this out to me. I didn't notice this, and she's kind of almost ruined me listening to English presenters of soccer games when I watch them. Is in England, and I know I must do it too. And if she actually listens to this, she's going to be laughing when you actually finish a sentence by asking a question, but in a different way. That was a great goal, wasn't it?
I disagree. I disagree.
Oh, he's got a lot to do there. It's hasn't he?
Is it in it?
Yeah. Oh, in it? What?
That's interesting. I've never really thought of it like that, but when I'm playing it back in my head, that's absolutely true, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I just think, oh my God, what am I doing?
Mazz, I've got a question about just your field of interest and biology in general, but when you look at where your field of study was when you first started it compared to now, have there been any major changes in the scientific community's understanding of certain topics or the way it's approached, or is there something that is vastly different about that field of science now than it was when you first got interested in it?
That's a very interesting question. It's hard to give an answer to that, actually, because if you just think about plant biology in itself, it's so broad, and so many people who aren't plant biologists have no idea. Like even one of my brother-in-laws, I was just having this conversation with him over dinner. He's an engineer, lives in Ohio. His wife's a lawyer. But we were just talking, and he said, wait a minute, plants have hormones? He said, I had no idea. I said, yeah, they grow, they reproduce, they do the same things human cells do. They react to hormones and light as well. And he goes, well, I had no idea. I said, well, why would you? Again, you probably last time you actually learned something that had the word plant in a sentence, you were 16.
Yeah, yeah. Or you were engineering a plant.
Yeah. But to actually answer your question, there's a lot of things that still, when we try to understand them, we realize there's more things leading onto it. For example, back in 1989, when I was applying to go to university, so in England you apply to go to, you're given 8 choices, so you can apply to 8 universities. They'll either send you a straight, say, all right, in your A-level exams, you need 2 A's and a B, and we'll let you in. Sometimes they interview you and then give you a grade. So I was going to these give you an offer. So I was going to these interviews, and I was being asked, and I was talking to like a plant geneticist, and this is back in 1989. You think about the how much science has gone through in your question, and this guy's going, you're entering plant biology in a fantastic time. In about a year now that we've worked out how to use agrobacterium and to put a gene into a plant, we can have, I predict in a year, we'll have wheat plants that can make their own nitrogen. We still can't do that. Because saying that and then learning how to do a technique, when you start looking at why it doesn't work, you realize that the amount of genes responsible for nitrogen fixation in a plant, it's not just one gene. It's then they say, I think there's 5. Now there was 11. Now there's 13. All those genes.
It's almost like string theory.
Yeah,
like,
all these
there's
genes
this many dimensions now. There's this many now.
Are interacting, and some genes turn genes off. And so if you look at, even if you start teaching a subject that you haven't thought about in years, there's new terms in it, like master genes. When I learned genetics initially, no one talked about master genes because we didn't know that genes act like a circuit board. One gene turns on the ability for other genes to turn on themselves, which go through a domino effect to a gene turning on a gene, turning on a gene. that's what you're looking at the effect for. But when you go back, you realize there were so many more steps to finding what started it. And that, what started it, is what you have to change and nothing else in order to see if you can manipulate a genetic effect.
Would something like the CRISPR, is it a gene, or how is it? The tool?
CRISPR is
the
a gene
methodology
editing thing, and it's
can that
amazing.
be used on plants?
You can, yes, you can use it on anything, and it's a realm that's exploding. Aldevron, a company, a local company in town, are working on it. In fact, they had a breakthrough symposium earlier last year, later at the end of last year in November. They had it was really interesting because they said that faculty and MSUM students could register for nothing. So all the senior biology majors all went to it that were relevant to their degrees in the BCBT program. And it was a 2-day symposium, but just learning about what CRISPR does. And of course, it was mostly in the medical fields and cancer treatments, and learning that they could turn off a cancer gene using CRISPR, or turn on a gene that wasn't allowing your immune system to work to fight a cancer tumor, and how very specifically,
right on top of that, Mike. There you go.
Very specifically you could get your body to work at fighting off naturally a tumor with the aid of other chemical treatments. It was brilliant, but yet CRISPR in itself is just it's a natural technique that bacteria developed by being attacked by bacteriophages, which are virus-like particles that muck up with the bacteria's DNA. So it's actually an immune system in a bacteria, but using that to selectively edit out bits of DNA to solve diseases is really where a lot of biology is now going to go, and it does work in plants as well.
Are there some big unanswered questions? Like, because I've been reading about space and astrophysics, I can certainly point to the ones that they have, right? What is dark matter? What is dark energy? What lies beyond the cosmic microwave background? Is inflation real or not? Blah, 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 blah. It goes on and on and on. Versus plant biology, we've been able to study plants for hundreds of years because they're right in front of us, right? And we've had constant access to them. So in your field, are there big unanswered questions that, if answered, could really change the game, or maybe they're so big and so out of reach that we may never know them?
I don't know if you want to, if you're looking for a big answer to anything.
I love big answers, and
I don't think there is, because there's so many aspects of it. There's 400,000 known species of plants. They all act biologically different because of the environments that they've adapted to. I mean, still understanding. We're still understanding which plants are closely related to each other. The more accurate we get with systems to look at genetic linkages between plants and how closely related they are, and how they actually the order and how they adapted to their environment and became land plants, for example, and which species are more closely related to each other. That's still changing. We're still working on that as new techniques come about. How to adapt plants to an ever-increasing human population. How to adapt plants to what human-induced climate change is doing. Getting humans to admit that climate change is real in itself is also a problem. But how you can get plants to adapt to those without causing other problems, I think, especially now, that's where most plant biology will be going, and I think that's where most money will be spent on ensuring that the staple crops still exist. And I think finding things to do with what we have. I mean, I didn't even know this. I mean, I was talking to when Dana's stepfather died. The guy that ran his farm, we were just talking, and he started talking to me about bushels and size of bushels, and I had to admit to him and say, well, I got 3 degrees in plant biology. I have no idea what a bushel is, because at some point they teach you all the ludicrously
like
cool
an
science
economic
stuff.
term, right?
Yeah, but basically, how much of a certain amount of plant you sell as a bushel. What is that? They don't teach us that. It's like they should have a special day in school where they say, here's all the stuff you're going to have to learn in the real world. Like, hello, kids. Well done for passing Calculus 3. Today we're going to learn how to write a check. This is how you balance your checkbook. We're going to teach you this before you forget what a check is.
It's fascinating to me, the thought of, well, yeah, until I got into an ag-related field, I didn't know how much a bushel was. In fact, I always thought, well, that's probably a fancy word for ton. They're talking about a weight-based measurement here or something like that. And then what the difference a bushel can be when you are thinking about soybeans versus corn versus other crops. Yeah. It really, I mean, it's like learning another language, so to speak. And it's just a skill set and a knowledge base that some people have from the moment that they're born, because they grow up on a farm and they know what that means. And they know that, gosh, so-and-so's adding another elevator. Well, does that mean it's a good thing or a bad thing for them? Are they having to store their grain longer, or are they doing it because they're getting a bigger yield per acre? And I think that on the ag side, they want, how can I maximize each inch of farmland? So can I get 2 more bushels out of an acre if we're figuring out the genes of sweet corn, and we're figuring out a way to make it grow faster or be able to plant it earlier, whatever that happens to be. But you're in a field where the world is watching, and even though they don't necessarily understand it, they are relying on it.
Well, of course, one of the problems is you can say to a plant scientist and say, all right, here's what I want you to work on. And they'll work on it, and they'll probably do a very good job on it. But you've left it down the room. My PhD supervisor said to me, all right, you hear about, and it's very important to teach hypothesis-driven science, but to a point, you've stuck yourself in a box. So you can say, all right, here's your hypothesis. I'm going to get a wheat plant to have a higher yield. Now, most wheat plants that we use today are actually it's a stable mutant called Norin 10, which is 2 feet shorter than a wild-type wheat, because if you have a shorter wheat plant, it makes more product yield than it does wasting energy it's got from the sun to actually grow tall, plus the fact they're all the same height, which means you can have a standardized piece of equipment to harvest them all. So that's brilliant. But what do you do with all the wheat you haven't sold? If you're teaching a plant science class, personally, I think you should also get into soil. You have to look after your soil, therefore you need an understanding of how soil works. Then you're going to have to know about a certain thing about why do you have a silo that's full of grain that you can't sell because you can't afford to make that much of a loss. So it's sitting there. I've driven by farms where the grain storage bins are full, and now they've got another set of grain piled up next to it. They can't sell any of it. So if you want a breakthrough in science, I think will be to stop the bottleneck and actually do something with the grain that's actually been grown, or the seed product that's been grown. Do something with it, cut through red tape, and allow people to have. You don't have to make a ludicrous amount of finances. Give them the ability to say, all right, I want to try this as a biofuel. Don't have any weird under the table handshakes are going, well, don't mess with that.
We're going to make a biofuel out of this because my nephew's growing this right now.
Yeah, but just get it to work. I mean, just like, I think corn was a huge mistake to use because, we'll grow corn and do it. Great for the growing corn, but then it doesn't work. You've got corn everywhere. We still don't have a biofuel. Look for something that you can logically use. Look at what certain small projects are working on. I mean, when I do aquaponics and talk about it, everyone immediately thinks that I want to. Someone actually said it to me just a couple of weeks ago. So you're planning on doing this in a 1,000-acre field? I said, well, no, that'd be ludicrous. You can't. What do you want to do? Dig up 1,000 acres?
Yeah.
Grow
how much perch do you really want to put in that thing?
Yeah, you can't. It's impossible. I'm talking about this. You can do this sustainably in your backyard, and you can grow some crops. It's never going to compete with monocrop agriculture, which is a bad idea, by the way. Go back to old farming techniques, which allowed for more protecting of the environment, and that's the key.
I've been wanting to learn more about aquaponics because I keep aquariums at home. So I have a big goldfish aquarium and I have a turtle aquarium. And so there's just so much waste, right? Ammonia and nitrates and stuff that build up. And aquaponic systems, if you are a fish keeper or a turtle keeper, actually does wonders for just filtering the water as well. And taking out a lot of the impurities. And you've got basically all this usable material that you could be using to grow some kind of plant of some kind and creating something else on top of it. So at some point when I've got the time to focus the energy on that idea, I want to dive more into aquaponics, and I'll look at these setups of people who, it's almost like a complete cycle. Like that's
exactly what it is.
It's just so cool. They'll have is there a certain type of fish you're using?
I use goldfish and tilapia.
Tilapia, that's what I was trying to think of.
Tilapia is a great example of using a fully sustainable fish for two reasons. One, they're incredibly hardy. If you can keep the temperature from fluctuating wildly, they're very resistant to disease. They can take a certain amount of stress. You can eat them.
They get
They're
big.
delicious.
They're delicious.
Yeah.
They get big if you look after them, and then you can eat those. So then you've got meat as well as the plants that you can grow with their waste. If you get everything in balance, you feed them, they'll poop. The ammonia will get converted to nitrates and nitrites. If you've got a bacterial background balance, that will break and oxidize ammonia to nitrate and nitrites, which then can be taken up by the plants via the roots. See, in the water, that just through the root uptake gets turned into proteins, enzymes, allowing photosynthesis to occur. Plants grow, they produce their yields.
I'd really like to do that for my turtle because the turtle just produces so much more waste than a fish does. Just so much more waste. And also I'd like to give him some sort of above water environment to move around in that might have more of a natural feel to it.
Well, you can do, anything that, I've seen documentaries where, people use chickens. Anything that's a cold-blooded animal doesn't produce any bacteria that can be harmful to humans. So chicken poop in water would actually work perfectly well to be cycled through and filtered by the plant.
Wow.
As well. And people do that. They have chicken coops underwater. They got tilapia in the water. Everything is a big cycle. Then you've got chickens that you can eat. You got eggs. You got fish.
Mm-hmm. The circle of life.
I love the concept of somebody walking up to you and just saying like, so I'm replacing my farm with this. Be like, well, no, not especially in the way that I've designed this in particular.
I got something that's you can grow 24 plants in one go. I'm not trying to take over the world. I'm trying to show. I did it as the way to scientifically study this to show that there is a difference, and there is. There's quite a remarkable difference in the height, the growth rate, the amount of product you produced. Lauren especially was doing some fantastic initial work where she has now shown that there are differences in vitamin C content between a plant grown in an aquaponic system, tomato fruit, and a tomato grown in soil as a control.
Wow.
It's a little bit richer in the aquaponics, yeah. I've heard people say that if you've only had store-bought strawberries in the last 20 years, you actually don't know what a strawberry tastes like because they've changed so many things to be able to have these higher yields that if you were to go and taste a wild strawberry, you'd be shocked.
Yeah, well, people don't realize that there are different cultivars of strawberries, and interesting fact, the last time you learned anything about plants was when you were 16, is there are cultivars of strawberries that have 14 chromosomes. There are cultivars of strawberries that have 70. So the vast difference in the genetics between the strawberry is also going to affect the taste of the thing anyway and how it grows. So it's not just a strawberry.
Interesting.
Yeah, people don't realize that a banana, there are some people in the world that actually like eating those things. I wouldn't be one of them. They're a sterile, seedless mutation of a wild banana plant. Wild bananas aren't yellow. Wild bananas have seeds in them. They taste different.
Have you had a wild banana?
No, I detest the mutated, sterile yellow types that I wouldn't even venture to eat.
Not even for science?
No, not even. No, I don't know. Well, why do I hate bananas? It was banana custard. When I was in high school in England, I went to a Catholic school, and every Tuesday we got deep fried spam fritters, which was lovely, and chips. That was Tuesday. But it always came with banana custard. And by the time you ate your spam fritters, which were lovely, your banana custard was cold, and then you had to eat the cold banana custard.
I was going to call this episode Dr. Mazz, but now I'm going to call it lovely spam fritters. Is that what you call them?
Spam fritters, deep fried spam. Nothing bad or unhealthy about that meal choice for a high school kid.
No.
Talk about a mutation right there. Have you ever been to the Hormel Museum? Because, it's just a hop, skip, and a jump away.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful place to visit.
I feel like that would smell really bad.
Actually, this leads me back to a question you asked me ages ago that I don't think I answered about what I miss about growing up in England. The food.
Yeah?
Yes.
So give me an example.
Oh, just the food. It's just so much nicer. Well, Dayna, bless her, Dayna does this fantastic job, and she's also doing this great job of making me incredible. For someone whose parents are Irish, who is actually by nationality Irish, I eat incredibly healthily because of my wife. She's determined that I'm not going to die like most of my relatives. I'm going to outlive them. A lot of them have died in their early 60s.
So not a lot of bangers and mash is what you're saying.
Well, the bangers and mash, but healthy bangers and mash, just beans, vegetarian options. Dayna is a vegetarian, and she is also a fantastic cook. But she once tried to make haggis for me as a surprise, and she ordered an American-style haggis, which was actually great.
Yeah?
But real haggis, the first three ingredients of real haggis are actually illegal to consume in America.
Yep.
Was it like cocaine,
No, it's
nails?
not. So, most people think, no, it's sheep lung.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
It's things that you would consider an animal byproduct,
and
not
the
edible.
the
It's not the stuff that we just put in our hot dogs and stuff?
No,
it's
okay.
actually
Imagine.
beyond a hot dog.
Okay. Beyond a hot... That might be the episode title now. So many good choices. Anyways.
My family is almost 100% Scottish, and so when my sister and I went to England, we were like, well, we've got to go up to Scotland, and we've got to experience real Scottish life. And we've had haggis in the United States, and we thought, well, we'll try it in Scotland too. And it is drastically different.
Yes, it
and
is.
I miss it. And I think it's like a hot dog, right? If you think about what you're eating, it might be a little unsettling, but I think the taste is just fine.
It is.
I also miss, when I was in England, salmon mousse is something you don't find anywhere in the United States.
Dayna actually had some salmon mousse over Christmas.
Oh, did she enjoy it?
And double cream, not clotted cream, double cream, is something that should be banned.
But it's
Actually,
not quite
'cause
yet.
We had some fantastic desserts with just double. It's like yogurt, thick yogurt, but it's just cream, and it is in small doses. Fantastic. But if you had it every day, you'd be dead.
I'd be willing to try that.
I also miss, I had a double-decker candy bar when I was in London.
Oh, my God, yeah.
And those things were out of this world, and I miss it. I also miss, the best falafel I've ever had was in down by the cemetery where that Grey Friars Bobby was a part. There's a little falafel stand there. Best falafel I've ever had in my entire life.
Kebabs.
Ooh. See, There you go. Food is one
kebab.
giant aspect.
I didn't actually when over Christmas. I never got to get a kebab because I had too much double cream in my stomach, I think. But there was this kebab van just about a mile from my mum's house that just, it used to park on the side of the road on a Saturday night, and you got your meat. Well, I wouldn't even say what it was. And we'd just call it meat.
Yeah, spam.
I don't think it was spam. Spam's actually reasonably healthy for you compared to kebab meat. But
it was lamb. It was spam that's made out of
but
lamb.
The vegetables were all pickled and everything. So
that's gross. Pickled stuff is gross to me.
No,
I can't do that.
A real European kebab is just a thing of beauty.
Yeah, that's something my wife is really looking forward to trying at some point. She's a huge fan of Europe, specifically England. And she keeps saying, like, I would love to go there for our honeymoon. Wink, wink. That'd be a great choice. Wink, wink.
I bet she'd also just love to have a honeymoon.
Yeah, she would. She certainly would.
It also depends where you go because, I went to college in the north of England for 5 years, and I just love the way they sort of, some people would argue semi-cook the food. They kind of warm up the bacon instead of cooking it. You kind of get used to it, but I like that. Dayna had her first real Yorkshire pudding. Dayna Del Val, you should get her back.
Yeah,
just to ask food. Her about her fantastic cooking ability, of all her other strengths, and how she and her organisation keeps this very building going, and everything else that she does. She still finds time to be an outstanding cook.
Well, there are those overachievers in the world.
Yes, where do you think Quinn Del Val got all that from?
Yeah.
I'm just a biochemist. He got all of his overachieving from his mother.
Dayna is one of those people where I'm like, what time do you get up in the morning? Goodness. And what time do you go to bed at night? Because the amount of stuff you put into a day is amazing. I've known Dayna since the summer of 1998 when I took Totally Troubled classes, and she was the assistant teacher for it. And she was, I think, at an age of her teaching, and we were the kind of crappy kids that we were like, let's mess with this lady. And
no, you don't do that.
You don't do that with Dayna. And she didn't take it well, but we were awful. Years later, I run into Dayna again. Oh, it's Dayna. Wow, she's much more chill than I remember. I wonder why. She met Mazz. That's why. That's what it is.
I don't think I can take all the credit for that one.
I'm going to give you all the credit. I'm sure there are things about you that she has improved drastically.
Oh God, practically everything.
Well, you're still alive, right?
Yeah,
You're still here.
I'm still alive. My arteries bend still.
Yeah,
despite the double cream. We got to spin together 3 times a week.
Oh wow.
Yeah, 6:30 in the morning.
Oh,
is that how you keep a happy relationship together? Is you do spin classes?
I think it's because we try and do everything together, and
well, you generally seem to like each other too.
We did. Actually, the fact that we actually genuinely like each other is a big. If you're listening, kids, find someone that you like, and hang out with them a lot.
Isn't there some truth there where when you're seeking out activities to do together rather than I need my me time,
right?
When you're seeking out activities that you can do solo, I think you need to really look at saying, like, okay, am I trying to pull away from this person? But when you enjoy doing everything together, when you're out seeing a movie and thinking, I would enjoy this even more if my partner was with me so that I could talk to them about this afterwards, then you've really got something.
Well, there is that too, but there's also things like that. Dana's working on me not being worried about being referred to as Billy No Mates. I won't go to a movie on my own because I'm afraid of someone thinking I have no friends. But I'm trying. I've gone over to this is a thing. When Tucker
look at that Billy No Mates over there.
There's your title of your episode.
Billy No
right
Mates.
there.
That's the one.
So I've actually gone to a couple of films on my own. I go on a Saturday at 11:30, and mercifully, the 3 films I've seen ever on my own, there's only 2 of them. There was no one else in the movie theater except me, and I have to do that because you say doing things together. Yeah, we do try and do things together, but one of the things that are still polar opposites between Dayna and I is our taste in movies.
Does she talk during movies?
No, but she thinks that every movie I want to see is appalling.
Could we have an example of something you saw solo?
I had to go and see Venom solo.
Oh,
That's definitely not a Dayna movie.
No,
for sure.
I saw the remake of Death Wish solo.
and it's really
But then
hard.
Dayna does surprise me. When we went to see Hunter Killer together,
Yeah.
she doesn't mind Gerard Butler movies, I've decided, because she didn't mind Geostorm.
What?
Oh,
Whoa.
you're kidding me,
Whoa,
right?
I kid you not.
whoa.
Dayna said, and I quote, "It wasn't that bad."
Oh, interesting. So my wife and I bonded
Or
over
actually, I
Gerard
think she said
Butler.
it wasn't as bad as she thought it was going to be. Because there's a
there you
distinct
go.
and important difference in those two statements.
Right.
When you walk into a movie thinking this is going to be garbage, it's so easy to be pleasantly surprised, isn't it?
Yeah. But Dayna did not like.
Did you see Den of Thieves?
No, but Dayna
That one's
has
really bad.
has seen these three movies. Believe it or not, she's seen White House Down,
Yeah.
Olympus Has Fallen,
She
and
really likes-
London Has Fallen.
Really likes Gerard Butler.
Even the Gerard Butler for the last two was a bit of a stretch, but she hated those films, most because of the dialogue.
Oh, really?
What about 300?
She never saw that.
That's peak Gerard Butler right there.
Yeah. That's I think that's probably CGI Gerard Butler, unless he sort of took a year off to spend in a gym.
Yeah, a lot of makeup effects, I think. I can draw abs on my tummy, too, if I really need to. Do you know there's a third movie coming out in the White House Down... Or no, in the Olympus Has Fallen series. It's called Icarus Has Fallen, and I believe it's a takeover of Air Force One.
Is it?
Very excited for
Well,
that.
they did that with it. They did Air Force One with
Harrison Ford.
And there's
Get
a
off
film
my
Dayna.
plane.
Dayna and I saw those films before we met, and she hated that movie. I think there's a scene where he kicks someone off the out
Get
the
off
back.
my plane.
That's exactly the line that she hates in that movie.
So what kind of movie does Dayna like?
Oh, she actually does like a lot of really good period drama movies. Actually, sort of what most normal people would consider a nice movie. Dayna likes. So
Sure,
it's just-
I imagine
it's
Dana's
probably
very
just me.
excited for the Downton Abbey movie.
yes,
She's fully prepared for that.
I think she is.
Yeah, and I am too. I'm very excited.
We have recently seen. We went back to Windsor Castle to saw Meghan Markle's dress.
But that was a thrill for you.
It was white. It was a wedding dress. It was
Does she
nice.
follow the royals? Is she really into that?
Yes, her and her mother really like the royal family.
Goodness, Dayna.
So, are there fun things that, because Americans can become obsessed with British culture, were there fun things to be able to be like, no, you're wrong. It's nothing like that. It's great that you think that Sense and Sensibility is how everyone lives in England, but that's not really what it is.
Oh no, but it used to be. It used to be. And Dayna loves like Jane Austen and the Brontes. So just last year, I suppose 2 years ago now. It's 2019. I was on sabbatical, so we went to England because I was visiting a friend of mine at Oxford. Name dropper there, a friend who I met when I was doing my PhD. He's still at Oxford. He was the chair of the botany department at Oxford, so he put us up in guest quarters at Oxford University for a couple of days. We borrowed his butler. I'm not kidding.
Nice.
And we dined. We had breakfast where they filmed the dining hall in Harry Potter.
Whoa!
We had breakfast there. And now that Dayna's been to York, she saw where they filmed Diagon Alley. But we went to see Jane Austen's house that time, and when we just got back from going to Yorkshire to see where the Brontes grew up. So Dayna loves going to see the literary tours. I've got to take her to Glasgow to show her the house where Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein, which I walked by every day when I was going to Glasgow University when I worked there.
I used to walk by a building that used to be a Hardee's and then became another place and then became a Hardee's again. So that's the difference in how the childhood was for you versus me.
Yeah, because I used to walk by Windsor Castle a lot when I was a kid as well.
They tore down this KFC and then I couldn't walk by that anymore.
That used to be a bank.
But what really distressed Dayna was that we went to see where Will Shakespeare's birthplace. And because
Stratford-upon-Avon?
we went to Stratford-upon-Avon, but where his house is, they built a 7-story cement parking lot right next door. And I don't know if it was the fact that it was bucketing it down with rain that day, but she kind of lost some of the Stratford-upon-Avon buzz right there when she saw this
It's a real
cement 7-story parking lot next to where Shakespeare grew up.
When I was in Amsterdam, we toured the Anne Frank house, and it was one of the most moving experiences I've ever had in my life, until we exited and you found out that they added a gift shop in there as well. And I always think I understand that this is part of the revenue that keeps this place going and that there are costs involved with this. But do I really need to walk through a gift shop where I can buy an Anne Frank mug?
Right. Yeah, it depends what you sell. I mean, there's 3 gift shops in the grounds of Windsor Castle, but of course they're all tastefully done.
Right. Like while Anne Frank was cowering in the attic, being afraid for her life, was she also thinking, I hope one day they attach to the side of this building a place where people can buy me tchotchkes, you know, and bookmarks and T-shirts.
And additional Kodak film.
Right.
For their needs. And that was one thing that when I was on 2 school tours through Europe that I really noticed. Gift shops are very popular, but now that people don't buy film anymore, that was a major markup for gift shops. I wonder what they've added in place of selling canisters of
Shot
film
glasses.
now. Is that what it is?
Well, I mean, they're cheap to make, and you sell them for $5.
What they actually do is they sell you postcard books. So they actually take the pictures and turn them into postcards, and then you can spend a fortune buying the postcards and then framing them.
Oh, there you go.
And have pictures of where you've just seen.
I remember. Have I told the story on the podcast about when I went to Vatican City?
I don't think so.
I don't think so. So one of my first tours through Europe with my French class, because I took that through my junior year, and then I found out I didn't have any talent for it. We stopped at the Vatican. And it was a really neat experience. You go through a customs to get in there because it's technically another country.
Yeah.
And then there's a gift shop. And one of the items in the gift shop were handmade rosary beads made from the roses in the garden. And they were very, very reasonable as far as price. And I said, well, gosh, I want to buy one of these. I'm not Catholic, but I love just the history and the story behind this. And so when you purchased anything at the Vatican's gift shop, they would take it and a cardinal would bless it if you'd like, and then they'd drop it off at your hotel. I thought, this is amazing. So several other kids in my tour group bought these rosary beads. They're blessed by a cardinal. And then we found out that a couple of other kids who are from Mississippi on the same trip bought shot glasses and had the shot glasses blessed by a cardinal. And then they thought it was really fun to drink out of these shot glasses. And they were literally like shot glasses that said like Vatican City or, you know, or had a picture of the
no
Pope's
popes
hat.
about it.
Yeah.
Pope dreams.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And I just thought, well, you know, this is why Americans have such a bad rap.
Hanging with
like,
Mr. Pope.
We got to bring in more shot glasses because those American 14-year-olds are really digging these. Ugh, it's never been more embarrassed in my entire
Finger
life.
cuffs. Maybe like a little kazoo.
Oh, like,
yeah.
yeah.
Yo-yo.
Why not? Or a T-shirt that said, I went to the Vatican and all I got was this T-shirt. Ugh.
My
Gift
Pope
shops.
Mobile is a Ford Taurus.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's
that's what
endless.
it is.
I kind of think we should start telling the Pope store how to sell their stuff.
Yeah, the popery.
Yeah.
Mazz, thank you very much for spending some time with us
Oh,
this
you're
morning.
welcome.
This
It was
is
fun.
a great episode. And if people are interested in reading some research that you've done, or do you have a Twitter handle? Do you have anything like that anywhere that people can find you on the internet?
No. Well, I have my my MSUM teaching website. I am on Facebook.
You're on Facebook.
So you can find me there.
In fact, I think on Facebook you've got the longest list of former jobs
I know it's
that I've
terrible.
ever seen.
It's like the academic in me just shone through there.
It really. I was like, oh man, I really have got
God, this
to up
guy's
my
boring.
education.
I don't want him on my show. Oh, God. He's got a master's degree in plant pathology. How nerdy is that guy gonna be? You know?
Yeah, well, we talk about things like the Nutty Professor 2 on this show, so.
No, well, we've only talked about the Nutty Professor 1.
We've talked about number 2. We just didn't do a commentary
the
for
clumps.
you.
We'll bring you back, Maz, and we'll do the clumps commentary.
Let's bring Dayna, too, because I'm sure she'll love that
She'll
movie.
love it.
Oh my God, yeah, we can do a music appreciation podcast for you. That'll be music and film appreciation. That'll last about 2 minutes.
That's going to wrap it up for today's show. If you enjoyed this episode of JJ Meets World and would like to help us continue to produce 2 new episodes every week, you can donate to our Patreon. Check out patreon.com/JJMeetsWorld and donate today. Even as little as $1 a month can go a long way. Visit our website at www.jjmeetsworld.com or hit up our social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all the sites the kids are using these days. If you'd like to stay up to date on new episodes of JJ Meets World, you can find us on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, YouTube, or wherever you consume the podcast that you love. JJ Meets World is produced every week by Tucker Lucas. You can find out more about Tucker's work by checking out www.moonbasemaria.com. If you want to get in touch with your host with the most, go to linebenders.com and you can find direct contact info for JJ. I got pulled over today by a cop who, for a split second, I thought was a Terminator from the future. And then I realized, that's silly. I already killed that Terminator.